Hello and welcome to Insights in Action with Orange 142, where we interview agency leaders and business owners to uncover the journeys, strategies, and insights that drive their success. At Orange 142, we're all about transforming brand stories into impactful digital experiences through innovative media and marketing solutions. And today I'm very lucky to be joined by Ned of Power Digital Marketing. How's it going, Ned?
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you here. And I would love to just start this off by learning a little bit more about your background and a little bit more about Power Digital Marketing.
Yeah, of course. My background started in the D2C e-com space by building analytics stacks and basically synthesizing the analytics architecture for a lot of brands that candidly were just behind the curve, right? They didn't have fundamental data stack set up, even just rudimentary things like proper GA setups, GTM setups, et cetera, what have you. And so I started there and then migrated into the world of experimentation, namely because I started to make, as I was getting into the data of clients, I would see certain patterns. So I'd make recommendations as to how they could optimize their web experience or their mobile app experience or what have you. And they always got really excited about those recommendations. And they'd be like, hey, can you give us more of that? And I'd give them a whole bunch of ideas just on the side. And I kept coming back months later to check in, and none of them had ever executed on a single idea. So I was like, okay, there's a model there, right? So I started to get into this world of being like the experiment guy, right? So I used my background in statistics, some background I had in behavioral psychology to start to build out these like behavioral heuristic models to run at the time what I called just like experiments. Really, what I was doing is get into the world of like A/B testing, CRO, AOV testing, price elasticity modeling, multivariate experimentation, et cetera, and found myself with five or six core brands that I was working with for a couple of years as like the kind of de facto head of experimentation for all of them. Had a lot of success with that, had a lot of demand for the model. So I decided to start an agency. That was the beginning of 2019. So I started Endrock Growth and Analytics, doing just that, but on a service-based angle from an agency perspective. Scaled up pretty fast. We grew to about 100, 120 people on the team, few hundred clients. And then we went through an acquisition in 2023. So December 23 was successfully, we were bought by Power Digital. Part of that deal is I came over as the chief growth officer of Power, brought my whole team over, brought the whole client book over, and basically been overseeing growth strategy, CRO, some analytics works, web development. And now, candidly, where I'm spending a lot of my time, most of my time, is focusing on our new AI division that we're spinning up, which is effectively AI consultation to optimize this rapidly expanding, I just almost want to call it concept, because a lot of brands, that's literally what it is, just a concept for them, so that they can integrate certain agentic models to find efficiencies, find revenue growth, marketing efficiencies, and even things like conversion rate optimization. So going down that route now, but that's a little bit about my background. And yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And so you went through a an acquisition from Power Digital Marketing. Just to dive in a little bit about that, like how was that for you? How were you approached? And what made you want to say, yeah, let's team up with a big agency like Power?
Yeah, sure. Candidly, and I say this all the time, it wasn't part of the plan. We were growing, we were like doubling the size of the agency every year. We were growing really fast and we were very profitable. I didn't have any co-founders, any investors, just had built it myself. And so things were great, right? It was a great business, scaling really fast. And I just happenstance had come across somebody in the basically M&A space, if you want to call it. He's effectively was a banker, but in the M&A space. And he took a look under the hood and was like, look, you got something really valuable here. And I know there's some large organizations that are like keenly interested in this type of model and what you've built and your margin profile and all the different aspects and boxes to tick that would make you a attractive M&A target. And the way I looked at it was worst case scenario, I was going to get a pseudo MBA and how this process worked. And mainly, I'll be honest, I wanted to see what they didn't like about the company so that I could go and fix it and make it better and more attractive to the marketplace for a potential exit down the road. Candidly, the LOIs started to come over. We started with a broader aperture like most do, and then narrowed it down to three. And when the LOIs started coming over, I was very pleasantly surprised to see that the market valued us pretty high, right? And so because of that, I realized that, yes, like all businesses, there was a lot of things to work on, but candidly, we had already passed a certain point that I didn't think we were quite at yet in terms of market valuation. And it was a great move. And candidly, for the maturity of the offering, I really wanted to move up market into some larger logo clients, et cetera, and even take this like evangelical model I built out on CRO and apply it to big organizations. And Power already had just some tremendous inroads with huge clients. It's a world-renowned agency. And so to me, that made perfect sense to hitch my cart to that wagon, and did really well. Yeah, it was a great move. It's been a beautiful integration, candidly. They are private equity backed. So I obviously was dealing with private equity throughout that acquisition, technically who I sold to. But yeah, it's been a great experience so far.
Wow. So you guys get really deep into the data and when you talk about CRO and A/B testing, and I'm curious, what do most brands get wrong when it comes to A/B testing or web experimentation?
Yeah, great question. This is how the vast majority of CRO individuals, agencies, what have you, divisions and other digital marketing agencies will approach CRO, right? Is they'll take a look, let's assume you're the client, they'll take a look at your site, they'll look at immediate competitors, and then they'll look at brands that are not competitors, but they're like adjacent. They're like tangentially similar to you in some respect. And they'll say something to the effect of, look at how they did their navigation, let's try that. And that's a very design centric approach. It's like, it's a silly analogy, but I use the analogy like I put you in front of a home in the front yard and I say, hey, your job is to renovate this house. And you're like, the shutters look terrible. Let's repaint those, not realizing there's holes in the roof. So, what I mean by that is the data modeling is the key to the whole thing. Understanding where the metrics on fire are, where a brand is under index, where there's elastic opportunity to improve in a metric to say, if we prove that little metric right there, the whole thing's going to improve dramatically. That's the weak point. Another way to put this is I've had many times where I'll onboard with a client, they'll be like, hey, first thing we want to redo the homepage. It's hold on a second. Your homepage navigation rate is like one of your best performing, like standout metrics on the website. Why would we address the best performing metric when all these other down funnel metrics are significantly weaker performing? And so to answer your question straightforward, it's candidly our data chops, right? Our ability to not look at design, not start getting into recommendations, and first get into your data to understand the mosaic of where consumers are struggling. And from there, then hone in. It's not that our ideas are like these wild whiz bang ideas no one's ever heard of. It's just we know where to apply them in the funnel at what time to maximize the result. And that's really the elixir to why we've had outsized results with clients over the years.
Wow, that's really interesting. It's really cool to see how deep you guys get into the data for your clients, you know what I mean? And I think that data really tells the story. Where does that for you even starting your original agency and stuff? Was that always just a passion for you to really like, hey, to understand this is how the numbers work and this is the story that the numbers tell?
I accidentally fell into a lot of these things, right? So
Yeah.
again, I have a bit of a background in statistics. And so I would,
Yeah.
with a former company I'd started, I don't know, what was it, like 13 years ago, right? I would use a lot of our web data to ideate on marketing strategy, right? And I just thought that's how everybody did it, but it turns out it
Mhm.
really wasn't. And I just pieced these things together. And then, as I mentioned, I started getting into the world of like analytic stack development, et cetera. So that tied on top of it. Then I started to just make some of these visual recommendations and people seemed to love it. And I was like, why do they like my ideas better than someone else's? And I was like, oh, it's because I substantiate it with data. That seems to be why. And it all just, the picture became clear over time. It really wasn't this woke up one day and just figured it out. It was
Yeah.
over time, just like iterating and pivoting it. And then I really
Yeah.
nailed the model. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of that just comes from, I think, just trying to give clients what they ask for, or they need too. Like you just get into these things. I feel like that happens so much in the agency world compared to other industries where you'll be into one specific thing and then the client will be like, wow, you're doing a really good job with this. Do you also do this thing? And then you just
Yeah.
like, no, but let me look into it. And then you just more and more clients start requesting, and that's how you build out this agency that does a lot of different things really well.
Yeah. And that's what's happening right now, candidly. I just obviously been known as a CRO guy and building a
Yeah.
pretty substantial CRO organization. And so now that I'm just sidestepping into this world of utilizing the architecture that AI provides to achieve efficiencies, both exogenously, like introspectively for companies, et cetera, operationally, marketing, you even predictably, right? And so it's the same kind of thing where that same, let's call it data driven type of mindset, that ethos, so to speak, is now transitioning over into this world of, again, building out certain agentic models for clients and different RAG architecture as an example so that they can do better, right? In whatever that they're trying to do, which is usually conversion optimization or efficiency optimization or like tacit knowledge retention, right? So, yeah.
So, when you're launching a CRO program for a new DTC client, where do you usually start?
So always, as mentioned before, always with the data. So typically, if there's a customer, or I should say, like an existing customer of Power Digital, or if there is a inquiring brand that's like, hey, we'd love to take a look at the CRO program that you built out. Maybe it'll work for us. I always offer a complimentary audit. So I'm like, great, just give me Google Analytics access. Let me dive in. Let me produce a complimentary report, and I'll do my thing. I'll dive in. I'll identify intra-funnel performances that are weak. I'll again look at demographic distribution modeling. I'll look at channel source medium specific index behaviors, different price elasticity behaviors, and then I'll come up with certain data points that are very clear to me are the weak links, and then I'll tether that with actual ideas. So that way they get a little trial run on how the model works. And usually those have a pretty high close rate because I think they understand, okay, this team certainly has a lot of domain expertise. They got a lot of experience. They've worked with some of the biggest brands in the world. We have a Fortune 5 client. We have multiple Fortune 50, several dozen Fortune 500. Some of the most recognizable brands out there are clients of ours. And it becomes, I think, pretty evident when we do that audit. So any interested brands, we're happy to do one of those.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when it comes to something like that, where you're diving so deep in the data, like this like free audit thing has become so overdone with a lot of agencies. But when you're doing it the way that you're doing it, where it's like, hey, I'm gonna really dive deep. And I think the data points you can reference, I think that's where an audit I think that's what it was truly meant to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of these audits that are going out where people are just like trying to get somebody in the door and it's their lead magnet essentially. But this is essentially, hey, I'm going to dive so deep in the data for you that I'm going to show you glaring holes of where you're missing out on, especially when you're talking CRO. CRO really, a lot of times, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you really don't start to look at CRO until you're doing at least a few $1 million a year. And until then, a lot of times it doesn't make sense. So especially for Fortune 5, Fortune 500, they're missing out on potentially millions of dollars of revenue when they're doing something like this. So that audit becomes so powerful, right?
Yeah, exactly. It does. It does. And again, yes, a lot of groups will do an audit. To me, I don't see any reason why a brand wouldn't take advantage of all of them. It's basically a free offering that the groups
Yeah.
are giving. But yeah, obviously, I've really put a lot of effort into perfecting that model. And so I know exactly where to look. I've been doing this a long time now and what to try to generate insight from. It's very rare that I'll get usually anything short of kind of an emphatic response to the audit delivery of folks being like, there was a lot in there, regardless of whether they move forward or not. Most do. We've got a pretty high conversion rate on those, but regardless of which, I usually get pretty unanimous reply on that was very positive and great information. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a win-win for them.
Absolutely. And so for you, what's the difference between running tests and actually having a culture of experimentation?
They're mutually inclusive in a lot of senses, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like the culture of experimentation is a thought process, right? And it's a belief system that a brand should buy into. And obviously, we try to encourage that with our clients. And so part of what we do is, in a way, is like educating them on this process, right? And there's a very specific step-by-step approach to do it. It's not just, oh, go run tests. You're going to go in circles doing that or end up what's called optimizing for local maximums. You want to make sure that you're getting good lifts, you're getting good swings, et cetera, and you're driving forward, statistically significantly speaking,
Right.
of course. To do that, there's a very step-by-step approach you have to take. And so as clients watch us do it every single month after month, test after test, delivery after delivery, they some more than others start to adopt that, right? And then incorporate that with everything else they're doing. Obviously, I believe really intently on this. To me, this is the elixir to growth for anything. It doesn't matter if you have a lemonade stand or a Fortune 5, how you grow, right?
Yeah.
So again, like there's a lot there to unpack. We don't specifically come in necessarily with most clients to just train them on how culture of experimentation work. It's like a byproduct of running tests. You don't have to run A/B tests. There's multiple other ways you could do it. Generally speaking, that's usually like the tool of choice within the kind of experimenter's toolkit is A/B testing, right? But
Yeah.
that being said, it's not paramount necessarily.
Right. And I think having, especially when you're talking something like CRO or just in general working with an agency that knows what it's doing, coming into it knowing that, hey, the expectation is not that we're going to have something that works right off the bat. It's that we're going to test a lot and we're going to experiment a lot and then we'll find something that works and we're going to optimize and all of that stuff. I think that's something for sure that clients I think the largest levels understand. And then the companies that are in the small to mid market, I think they're really starting to get that. Okay, an agency isn't just going to have everything right off the bat for you, but they are going to know what to test, how to test, and how to optimize.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. That being said, we do tend to get wins pretty quick with most clients, mainly because of not to promote my audit more, but like the thoughtfulness of
Yeah.
the audit. It's not
Right.
superficial at all. It's pretty in
Right.
depth. And so, because of that, like one of the other benefits to it is my team and I have a total roadmap of what we want to do
Mhm.
immediately before a client even signs because of the audit. So, we usually get a handful of wins out of the gates. Our average ROI is less than 2 months across
Wow.
all of the clients, which means we have like empirically with actual average revenue per user lifts from our wins in aggregate on a gross margin basis are exceeding our monthly fee on average before the end of month two. Obviously, that depends on the client size. A client doing 300 million a year on their site versus 3 million a year are going to have different timelines, but we generally get some good wins out of the way pretty quickly. So the ROI is very evident very quickly for most clients. And then we just sprint towards, double digit ARPU growth, some
Yeah.
more than others. We will average usually around 20% there.
Wow, that's awesome. This has been great, Ned. Where can people learn more about you? Where can people learn more about Power?
Sure. Yeah, of course, powerdigital.com. You can go to LinkedIn. That's probably the best spot for me, or even just reaching out directly to me on email, just ned@powerdigital.com. And yeah, obviously,
Awesome.
always keen to help brands scale and look under the hood and give them a hand. So
For
happy
sure.
to basically to encourage anyone who's listening, feel free to take me up on that offer.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you again for being on. This is great.
Cool. You bet. Thanks for having me.